So 3 episodes of Andor have come out so far, and it's pretty amazing. So far this show has completely blown my expectations. This is not a show that I was very excited for when it was first announced. I was a bit bitter, I was pessimistic. I was like, why are we making a show about a character that we know is dead? In a timeline that feels like it has been explored so many times. Of course I ended up being wrong, however I wasn't excited. Even when the trailers came out, which did make it look kinda decent, the cinematography looked really cool, it looked gritty, but it hadn't hooked me yet. I was still very skeptical, but oh my god, watching it was fantastic. The first 2 episodes were intriguing, they were interesting. I was like, okay, I like what's being set up here. And the 3rd episode just sealed the deal. After watching that last episode, I realized that this show is different. Those first 2 episodes weren't just slow for the hell of it. There was a meaning behind it. And that 3rd episode felt like the finale of a full season. It didn't just feel like the finale of a prologue. These first 3 episodes are like a little contained story. It's like the prologue before we get into the rest of the show, which I really liked. But they went all in. This show is already raising moral questions. I mean, we don't see Cassian Andor as necessarily a hero yet, because he did just murder 2 people right in the beginning. And that's the thing, Cassian Andor has always been a bit of a gray character, which I like, and it's being explored. He's not just a hero. But the writing, the dialogue, the action, the characters, it's all done really well. And this is not something I say lightly, because these things haven't been great in some of the previous shows we've gotten, such as Kenobi, which we'll talk about in a bit, and Book of Boba Fett. But I also just feel like this show is filmed really well. It feels like the creators are inspired. One thing I've thought about a lot when I've watched either a Marvel property or like a Star Wars property is that some of these scenes would be so much more impactful if the camera just stayed on the characters just a tiny bit longer. A lot of the time the camera pans away before we've gotten to see the reaction and the emotions of the characters, but it really does something when we just have a shot of, like the villain for example, just looking sad, just looking defeated, rather than just a quick pan over to him looking like, oh, you know, it stays on him. We see the other officer trying to get life into him, you know, but it's like he just feels nothing. It's like, I just really like that. It feels like the creators are creative. But yes, these first 3 episodes were amazing. I love them. And I really hope the show keeps going. I mean, in a lot of the other shows like Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett, I was on board in the first 2 episodes. And that's what this feels like. But I really just hope that it keeps it up, which I think it will. It just feels different. It has a different vibe. However, before we get further into this video, you should consider subscribing. We are so close to 2 million subscribers, and it would mean the world if you would help me get there. Also, you should check out my Patreon if you want to support me further. You can get some cool benefits such as your name appearing in my videos, or you can even get to see some of my videos early over there if that's what interests you. It's also just generally a really good place to talk to me directly through the chat, and I have some good conversations. So yeah, the link is down in the description and the comments. But anyways, let's keep going, and quickly talk about some of the criticisms that I've seen of Andor. As only 3 episodes have come out, the criticisms aren't that many. But one of the things that I've seen is that it's too gritty and that sex is implied. It's not something I've seen very often. I don't think it's a very big problem. But I've seen some people talk about it, saying that this is Star Wars, it needs a lighter tone, it needs to be more for children, none of this real life stuff. But I think it's needed in this story. This story is supposed to show a side of the galaxy that we haven't seen before, a side of the rebellion and the resistance that we haven't seen before. I personally like seeing characters who feel like real characters, and that's what they do here. They feel like they have real lives, they feel like they have motivations, their interactions and relationships with each other are realistic. And I think it needs a bit more grit, I think it needs more realism, a bit more of a darker theme than some of the other properties. Listen, I'm fine with most Star Wars properties having a lighter tone, being more kid-friendly, because at the end of the day, a lot of Star Wars is for kids, but they also realize that a lot of people who grew up with Star Wars are now adults, and they wouldn't mind a bit more of a mature story, and that's what we're getting, so I think that's great. And as always with everything that comes out nowadays, people are calling it woke, which is fucking idiotic. And it's not a problem. The people saying this are childish. They have no media literacy. This is a show that they really want to hate because they hate Disney and Star Wars in general. However, the show is actually not bad, so they don't have anything to criticize it with. So instead they have to revert back to, it's woke. Yeah, these people shouldn't be taken seriously. Now, one thing I hope myself is that this show stays low-key. Obviously, it's gonna tie in with a greater story, but I really hope this narrative doesn't have cheap cameos and like Darth Vader and shit. I want it to be self-contained. I want it to tell a truly meaningful story of hope and tragedy, failure and success, because it's been great so far, so I hope they just keep going. However, I wanted to also get into a conversation about the future of Star Wars. What does Andor mean for Star Wars? Because Obi-Wan Kenobi was the last show that came out, and while I really enjoyed the last 2 episodes from an isolated point of view, I mean, it gave nostalgia, and it had some good character moments, it had some cool fights, but it really did nothing for the franchise. It did something for Anakin and Obi-Wan's characters, maybe, but it feels like it's a separate thing. It doesn't feel like it had a plan. It's just like an isolated show that's not really connected to anything, you know? And I know it breaks the canon in a lot of ways. Now, this is not to say that if you liked Obi-Wan Kenobi that you're wrong. You absolutely aren't. There are many reasons to like it. I personally liked it to a good extent, but I don't think it does much for Star Wars. But what's next? What's to come? What's on the horizon? I mean, first of all, we have Tales of the Jedi and The Bad Batch Season 2. Now, I didn't watch Season 1 of The Bad Batch because I just wasn't interested, and I also didn't hear very good things. I mean, I've heard very varied things, but it just didn't capture my attention. Tales of the Jedi looks fun, I'll probably check it out, but the thing is, I've never been a big fan of the animation in Star Wars. I mean, I like the Clone Wars, I think it's good, but it's just never hooked me. I watched a little bit of Rebels, but I didn't really like it that much, and I haven't watched Resistance. I really love animation, that's not the problem. I think it's just that when it comes to Star Wars, I like live action better. I can completely understand why people are excited for these, but personally I'm not. And then Mandalorian Season 3 comes out, which I'm excited for. I like Mandalorian. However, it's not a show that hooks me. It's not one that I'm dying to watch. I think it could do some really cool things with Mandalore and Grogu and Mando, of course. But I'm personally not the biggest fan of the Mandoverse. I just rather see other things. And that brings us to Ahsoka, which, I mean, live action Jedis with lightsaber fights, count me in. I'm a sucker for stuff like that. Even if I'm not that interested in the story or the character, I'm not a big fan of Ahsoka. I think she's just been used a lot, and I'm getting a bit of fatigue. But I'll watch the show, of course. The Book of Boba Fett Season 2 is apparently on its way, and I'm not excited. I did not like the first season. I liked the first 2 episodes. I thought when they were just focusing on Boba and him trying to be the next crime boss, I thought it was interesting, but then it just brought in Mando, and then it brought in a lot of things that I just didn't really enjoy. However, Star Wars Visions Season 2 looks great. I love anime, and I love unique stories, and this is what that brings. Star Wars Visions, great. And then comes Skeleton Crew, which seems interesting, it seems unique, but it's also part of the Mandoverse, so I'm a bit apprehensive. It's not as different as I would want it to be. However, then comes The Acolyte, which, yes, I'm very excited for. It's so far away, I don't like that, but it's coming. I really want some stuff with the High Republic. I hope they build it up. I hope they don't just show the big parts like, oh, this is the fall of the High Republic and that's it. I want the past or the future things that happen to be the future of Star Wars. I don't want just a couple stories there and then back to the Skywalker saga where we feel comfortable. No, show us everything there is to see. And then maybe Lando comes out. I don't think they're certain whether it'll be made or not. And this is kind of in the same boat as Andor. I'm not excited for it, but it could turn out to be really good. I mean, I love Donald Glover. I think he's good as Lando, but I'm just not excited for it. I don't feel like it needs to be made. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think anyone is sitting there like, I need a Lando story. But again, that might just be me. However, then there are the future movies, and this is where my excitement gets higher because I like movies, I like Star Wars movies, and it's been a while since we've had one. Now, one that I'm not that excited for is Squadron. I think it'll be good, it'll be nice to go back into a cinema and see some Star Wars again, but after playing Squadrons, the game, I just don't feel like I need the movie. However, there's Taika Waititi's upcoming Star Wars project, which I'm very excited for. It's supposed to be a unique story, and knowing Taika Waititi, it's gonna be funny, it's gonna be comedic, but it's also gonna have heart. That's what I love about his movies. Now, I know his stock has gone down a little bit after Thor, Love and Thunder. People didn't really seem to like it, but that's definitely not the best of what Taika has to offer. I think this movie can be really fun. It's supposed to be something we haven't seen before, and that gets me excited. And then we have the possible Rian Johnson trilogy, which he'll apparently direct and write. And as you guys know, I'm a big fan of The Last Jedi. For all its faults, I think it did something very different and unique, and I really like that. I like Rian Johnson, I like his style of writing, and I like his style of directing. So I'm excited for this, and this is again supposed to be something completely different. I don't know in which saga or timeline, but it's supposed to be something with characters that we haven't seen before. And this trilogy, along with Taika's movie, is what I'm here for. I just want it to come. I know it's like years away probably, but I need it. I want The Acolyte, but I need these movies. However, I don't know if this trilogy will even end up happening. However, there are also 3 scheduled movies for 2023, 25, and 27. I don't know which ones they are, I don't know if it's any of the ones I've mentioned already, but if they're different, then fuck yeah, I want more movies. But also don't desaturate the movies, alright? Make them feel special. That's why I like the 2-year gap. 1 year gap is a bit much, but 2 years is perfect. There are also the video games coming out, which I'm excited for because I'm a sucker for video games. There's not much else to say there. However, the moral of the story is that there's just so much content to explore. There's so many time periods, there's so many planets, so many characters, so many stories to be explored. This galaxy is vast, its history is vast, its future is vast. Let's not get stuck up on the same stories, on the same timeline, with the same characters. It gets boring, it gets repetitive. And even if some of these projects are really, really good, such as The Mandalorian and Andor, I still just want something different. And maybe it's a sign now that James Earl Jones has retired from voicing Darth Vader. Maybe it's a sign that Star Wars needs to move on. Maybe once the Mandoverse ends, which hopefully it does, then maybe it's time to leave this saga behind and explore some new and exciting things. The thing is, I love Star Wars so much, but it just doesn't get me as excited anymore. Out of all these projects, even the ones that I want to watch, very few of them actually get me hyped. And that's a bit sad to me. However, if it gets you excited, then that's great. I don't want to take anything away from you. If you love the Mandoverse, if you love The Bad Batch, if you love these upcoming stories, fantastic. This is just my opinion. And there's room enough for everyone's opinions, alright? So let me know down in the comments what you think of the future of Star Wars. What do you want to see? What don't you want to see? Do you want to see a bit of a mixture between High Republic and future in this saga? Let me know, let's have a discussion. Me personally, I'll just be patiently waiting for the next big thing. However, that's all I have for today. Again, leave your comments down below on what you think of the state of Star Wars. And again, I want to thank our patrons, which includes our turf captain, Ben Joseph. Again, the link to my Patreon is in the description and in the comments. But other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe and peace out.